much. My name is Gyeke Tanoh. I come from Ghana. I work with Third World Network Africa, which is an NGO which engages with issues relating to globalization and Africa. And it's a research and advocacy organization. And I think that it's one of the reasons why it's been important for me to be here, is the role that the unique place that ROPE occupies as an African focused journal, credible with credible intellectual content, and which brings together a network of different thinkers, of actors, organizations, and so on and so forth. And I think that at this point in time, given the fact that Africa has been the laboratory for some of the worst neoliberal, since the days of structural adjustment, has been the laboratory for some of the worst neoliberal policies and impositions. The fact that there has been a global crisis, the fact that there is a process underway where neoliberalism is being discredited, it's important at that stage to put the alternative voices from Africa front and center of what new thinking and new forms of organization and new social and economic relations can emerge, and what political agency can emerge. And I think that ROPE plays an important role in doing that. So it's been good to be here from those points of view. The other reason why it's been important, and one of the highlights of what I've learned here, is precisely that the discussions here, given that they're from a cross-section of activists, of organizations, of people from different countries, different institutional locations, different sections of the global movement, global social justice movement, if you like, has meant that the question of strategy, even if that doesn't be discussed explicitly, has been implicit in every. The point is that holistically, what types of programs, what types of projects, what types of collaborations, what types of networking and forms of organization can we develop that begin to make systemic change? And I think that's been an important aspect for me. And in my own work, I think that given where I work in political economy, in relation to the program, the TWA program that I described, and what I've seen about the overlap between, for example, gender issues, environmental concerns, smallholder agriculture, wages, people being, livelihoods, working conditions, and so on and so forth. How all that is happening in a process where the extractivism is being intensified, exploitation is being intensified, exclusion at the same time is being intensified, the crisis of reproduction is also coming to the fore. All those things seem to overlap, whether it's in the rural space, whether it's in the urban space, and so on. So one of the things that again came out is how do you begin to build united fronts? That being in different streams of the movement, there is a qualitative additional value, a qualitative add value, which transforms everybody simply by coming together. Okay, it may enhance your capacities when you go back into your own stream, but even more than that, by the fact that you are organically interrelating, what you do is altered somewhat. It's enhanced and altered somewhat. And I think that has been one of the most important learning experiences for me. The opportunity to listen to people, to learn from them, and to think through what this overlap, what these strategic questions, what the strategic united fronts might mean in terms of economic programs, in terms of social liberation, in terms of economic democracy, in terms of revolution and transformation has been important. Of course, working at Third World Network Africa, we were the ones who hosted the first of the trilogy of ROPE transformation and resistance conferences about almost exactly a year ago in Accra, Ghana. So it's been useful also and very rewarding to see how the discussion has evolved. Okay, and to see how the participation has improved, and to see how the engagement has become more intense and has become less abstract. In the beginning, it was a lot more intellectual, a lot more abstract, a lot more theoretical. Important as that is, I'm in no way saying that is not important. But then I think that now we're beginning to see a more organic and fertile marriage between theory, practice, activism, and so on. And it's been a wonderful experience.
So what would you, just to give us a taste, right? Of some of the connections that you have been able to map between the various stakeholders that were represented here.
I think that one of the things that has been important, in the different emphasis that people have given, is that Africa remains important to the global system, and that Africa will be the site of scramble, of struggle, of competition in the global system. One, because in terms of the global system as a whole, in terms of, for example, if you take any factor like arable land, the availability of arable land, the fact that Africa still has the largest share of any region of arable land, means that whether you come at it from a food crisis perspective, from an ecological crisis perspective, from a land and agrarian transformation perspective, that land space of Africa will remain important. Same as in the area of minerals and raw materials and commodities. Commodities still, we can talk about financialization all we want, but commodities are still 30% of all trade and investment of transnational companies in the world. Transnational companies control 80% of all global trade. So Africa's centrality, no doubt. There's the demographic shift. Africa's growth by 2050, 40%, within this 21st century, 40% of the entire global population will be African. It will be the youngest of population in the world. I mean, there's so many transitions underway, which for anyone concerned about the future of humanity, unless you are able to engage with the African question substantively and begin to be interested in how new forms of alternatives, resistance, agency is rebuilt democratically from the African space, I don't think you have much to say that will be of great benefit to humanity as a whole, let alone for Africans. And I think the question of exploitation is central. Because everywhere you go, precisely because we're dealing with commodification and transnational companies extending their tentacles into every area of life, trying to extract surplus value and profits from everybody, it means that the experience of exploitation is central. For which reason, I think that despite the overlaps that I've talked about, it is possible to begin to conceive of the centrality of work and workers as, if like one of the most developed forms of exploitation, but who's, is spreading into the rural areas. Wage employment is, informalization actually is one expression of the expulsion and the closing down of the space for sustained, what do you call them? Subsistence, existence. You can no longer exist outside the market, outside, some degree of wage earning, outside, so on and so forth. So I think that in recomposing this idea of overlap, of united front, of new agency, of unities, of integrating struggles and agency and agendas, for me, one of the things that has become very salient is the role of workers. The world of work, its different forms and permutations, how we organize in and around those and interconnect that with the question of social reproduction and so on and so forth. And therefore the crisis that exists in the labor movement, its inability to recompose itself, to capture the different forms of labor, the non-formal and all that whole spectrum, plus the crisis of politics at the heart of the labor movement, the alliances with governments, the bureaucratization of the trade union movement, those I think are central questions now. And any regeneration from below, and any radical redemocratization from below, any new agency, any new project that brings new agencies to the fore, will have to contend centrally with the labor question.
Any parting words for our viewers?
Well, on the basis of what I just said, for me, I think that one of the things that I certainly from my home base in Ghana, the engagement with the labor movement, critical engagement with the labor movement, not allowing the labor bureaucracy to get away with all the social partnership, their sellouts and so on and so forth, and being able to begin to engage with the different forms of, precarious, the different gradations of precarious labor, urban, rural, and so on, is central. But we can't allow a narrow bureaucracy to keep hijacking and suffocating what, a space that should belong to all of us, and increasingly whose dynamics affect all of us. And we need a new regenerated labor movement. And I want to throw myself into the heart of that, and I suggest everybody think closely about that as well.
Since you walked into that, I have to part with this question. So what is your take on moves towards building a workers' party in the name of a workers' movement, a strong labor movement?
I think it's important. It's important, but I think we cannot, one of the things that a workers' movement and its political expression must take up is the separation between politics and economics. You simply cannot have political democracy and leave the economy in the hands of a minority. So the experiments about workers' control, about cooperatives, about self-owned funds, about collective equity, those have to be at the heart of that. You can't simply say nationalization and leave it at the level of the state. Our power must be built from all those angles as well. But secondly, I think also that we can't do too much of a top-down process. We should be wary of too much of a top-down process and too much of an electoral orientation. The organic inner life and culture of working people has to be our daily concern, and how that, allows them to express themselves, build their own power, reclaim society in their own name, and reshape society according to their own vision and their own needs. Absolutely central. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.